Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm very excited to be doing my first Zoom class with all of you. We have a lot more people that should be joining, so, but at the same time, I want to get started because it's, from 5 o'clock, so we can try to have dinner on the table at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to get started. We're making a Japanese stir-fry vegetable with tofu, and we're going to start just by cutting the tofu. Now, tofu comes in usually 1 pound boxes like this. You want to cut it open and drain the water out, which I already did. And then you're going to lay it out on a towel. Actually, before we do that, I want to make sure you all have turned your oven on to preheat your oven at 375, 350, 375, whatever, your oven. You can also, if you would like, you can fill a pot of water and turn that on to get that going. Oh, and also, if you could all mute your speaker so that we don't have the background noise. And then if you have a question, just unmute your speaker and ask the question. There's supposed to be 44 people on this Zoom today. So if everybody's talking at once, that would be difficult. So this way, you can just unmute it when you can.
Introduce yourself a little bit, but there's no speaker in here for you to play.
Oh, I have a question already.
That's not good. I need to be able to ask them a question. I need to be able to hear them if they ask a question.
Could you hear me?
I'm still learning the technology, as you all figure out. This is all new to me. So bear with us as we do this. I would also like to invite you all to get a bottle of wine if you'd like, so we can be like the Galloping Gourmet and share a glass of wine while we cook together. If you have an option for organic wine, I highly recommend that because there's so many pesticides and herbicides sprayed on grapes. If you can get organic, that's really great. So cheers to all of you.
See, it's delayed.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Bhavani. I'm sorry. I just had a little trouble getting in. So I'm going to give you a donation after. Let me just listen to the class. Is it online or just auditory?
Excuse me?
It's not visual, just auditory, right?
No. Yeah, it's visual. There's a whole Zoom link. You do the link and it's a video.
Yeah.
Bhavani, I'm going to make a donation. Can I get a copy of it after then, the video instead?
I'm recording this, so this will be on my website once I figure out how to do it. But yes.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so you have your block of tofu. I also want to just mention the tofu that I like to get is sprouted tofu. When it's sprouted, it's more alive and has more nutrients in it and available to you. So if you can get sprouted, that's great. This is a firm tofu. And the other thing that I like about this package is it comes split in two. So if it's just 2 of us eating, I can just cook half of it at a time. I don't have to cook the whole thing. Okay, so if you have not muted your speaker yet, please go down to the bottom left corner and press the mute speaker, okay? And then just unmute it if you have a question. So anyway, you're gonna cut each of the blocks of tofu into thirds horizontally, so you're making it thinner. And just lay it out on a towel like this. And then you can put another towel on top or just fold this one over. And I'm actually going to put it onto a little cutting board here. Not a cutting board, a cookie sheet. And press it. So I'm going to put this heavy skillet on top. Oh, that's not going to work. Find something else to put on top to press it down. And this just, by pressing it down, it helps take the water out. So I'm going to get a book to press this. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm just going to lay that book right on top and let that sit just for a little bit to absorb some of the water. I'm also going to turn my stove on where I have a pot for to boil the water for the noodles. And I also have another pot. If you look at the recipe, I looked at the recipe and I realized this is a recipe I wrote a while ago and I did not update it. So there's a few mistakes in there. One is the eggplant. I could not get an Asian eggplant at Whole Foods, so I got a rosa eggplant, which is also delicious and beautiful. But in the recipe, I talk about roasting the eggplant in the oven. And I have since learned about steaming the eggplant. The main thing with the eggplant is it absorbs so much oil. And if you try to just stir fry eggplant, it absorbs way too much oil and it becomes really oily. And I'm trying to cook with less oil. So that was the reason that I first discovered roasting the eggplant first. But that makes it a little bit hard on the outside. And I have since learned about steaming the eggplant, which really makes it so soft and silky. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a peeler. Now I've washed all my vegetables and I hope all of you have washed your vegetables. Feel free to make this along with me because that's the whole idea today is that we're going to be cooking together, okay? So you're going to peel the eggplant. You don't have to peel it totally. I like a little bit of the skin. And then cut the ends off. Cut it down the middle. And so if you have an Asian eggplant, that's even better. I love the flavor of the Asian eggplants. So that's just my preference. But any eggplant will do. So now I'm just going to cut it into cubes like this. And I'm going to turn on my steamer. And if you don't have a steamer, you can either, this is a steamer that is inside the pot, which is great, but many of you may have this kind of steamer, which also works really well to put into your pot. And so you just put an inch of water, because it doesn't take that long to steam the eggplant. And that's going to be for the eggplant. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and put it in right now, even though it's not boiling yet. And we can just let that go for a little bit. I have a compost bin over here, so all of my vegetable scraps go into this handy little compost bin, which I keep next to the sink. Okay, so when you are doing a stir fry, one of the important things when you're stir frying in a wok is you want everything to be crispy and come out ready at the same time. So it's important to know which vegetables take longest to cook. And in general, root vegetables are going to take longer to cook. So that's your onions, your carrots. Celery is not a root vegetable. That can take a while as well. Beets, turnips, parsnips, anything like that. Those are root vegetables and they take a little longer. So we're going to start by cutting the onion and the carrot. I've already peeled my carrots. You can also scrub your carrots well. You don't have to peel them. I'm going to start with the onion. There's many different ways of cutting an onion. When I'm doing a stir fry, I'm basically looking for a shape that's like crescent moons. And I'll be doing that with the carrots also. The carrots I'll be doing in julienne style. So you're going to take off the skin of the onion. And I hope you guys are cooking along with me. That's the whole idea. But if not, it's fine to just be watching and then make this at another time. Okay, so to get the crescent moons, you lay the onion flat on the cutting board, and then you use your finger as the guide so that you don't accidentally cut your finger. You keep the tips back, but your knuckle is the guide. And so instead of just moving my knife, I'm actually moving my finger back every slice that I do so that I'm controlling how thick the slices are so that they're relatively thin. And then when you get partly through it, you just turn it and do the other side. And with vegetarian cooking, the cutting of the vegetables and the prep is very often what people say takes the longest. And it's like anything, practice makes perfect. So the more you get to practice this, the quicker you will get at it. But if you see, I'm just moving my index finger back and keeping it out of the way of the knife. So very often when people cook, they like to have mise en place, that, you know, they have all the vegetables ready to go. In reality, that takes longer. I like to cook and chop as I'm going along. So the onions can start sauteing, and then I can cut the carrots. And then I'll add the carrots and I'll cut the next vegetable. So that way I'm cutting while things are cooking. And one of the reasons that I actually cook the tofu in the oven is also a time saver. You know, you can stir fry the tofu first. If you add the tofu at the end into the stir fry, the tofu starts to break up, and you don't want that to happen. So you really want a nice golden crisp skin on the outside of the tofu. And you can get that by doing it in oil into the wok first. But then you want to take it out before you do the vegetables. Or you can roast it in the oven, and that's what I've been doing to save time. So I'm going to turn my wok on, let that heat up, put a little olive oil in. Very often, another question I get often is, what kind of oil is the best to cook with? I love using olive oil. Olive oil has a lower smoke temperature rating, so you don't want to deep fry with olive oil, but you can certainly saute with olive oil. And we've all heard the Mediterranean diet is so healthy, and that's what they've been doing for a very long time. So don't worry about cooking with olive oil. However, if you forget that you've turned the wok on and you let it start smoking, which I have done before, then you actually want to dump that oil and start again, because once the oil has smoked, it's more carcinogenic and you don't want to use that. So you want to wait till the oil's hot enough that when you add the onions, you do hear that sizzle. Okay, I'm going to let that cook. I have this all the way on high right now. I will be lowering it at some point. My eggplant is now boiling and getting soft, and you're just gonna, have a fork nearby so that you can just test the eggplant, and when it's soft, it's ready. Basically, eggplant is one of those vegetables that does not taste good if it's undercooked. If there's a crunch to eggplant, it doesn't taste very good. So you definitely want the eggplant to be cooked all the way. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the cutting of the carrots. This is my favorite way of cutting julienne carrots. You want to cut the carrot on the angle like this. So you're getting nice pieces like this. And then you're going to end up julienning them. But I want to show you the difference. When you do it like this and then cut it into the julienne strips, they have a very nice shape because they're pointy on the top. And so they're really prettier and more elegant in the dish. If you were to, just for sake, I just want to show you, if you were to do it where you just cut the julienne like this, so that it has straight edges, it's just not nearly as pretty. And I always tell people eat with their eyes. So how it looks at first, even if you cut this down and make it thinner, it just doesn't have that pretty angle to it. So I choose to cut the carrots on the angle first, and then cut them into the julienne strips so that they're prettier. And over the course of a few weeks, while we do this cooking together, I'll be showing you different ways of cutting carrots depending on what else you're doing with them. Okay, so these are all nice julienne. I'm going to stir up my onions. And I'm going to add the carrots to the onions. I'm lowering the heat just a little bit so it slows down a little. So I still have one more carrot I want to cut here.
Hello?
Yes.
Do we boil the eggplant?
No, you're not boiling the eggplant, you're steaming it.
Okay,
So
steaming it.
let me show you again. I have a pot here, and I have a steamer inside.
Okay.
So just right on top of the hot pot.
And then, are we baking the tofu?
Yes, we're going to bake the tofu. That's what I'm just about to do. So this
Okay.
sauteing, I'm going to add some garlic and ginger to sauteing vegetables. And I already minced this, and I'm going to show you one of my favorite kitchen tools that I use to do my minced garlic and ginger. And it's a mini brawn. It's like a mini Cuisinart. And this is just amazing. You put anything in here, ginger, garlic, and we'll be making the tahini sauce for the noodles in here. But you just put the top on, and it just minces everything up really, really wonderfully. You can also, grind up some seeds this way. It's a wonderful device. And it also, just so while I'm showing you, has an attachment. So it's also an immersion blender. So if you're yesterday I made potato leek soup. And instead of having to transfer the stuff into the food processor, I just put this right into the pot and it grinds everything up. So it's really very versatile device. I highly recommend it. Okay, so I'm going to get my tofu back out now. And you can see it's absorbed all this water. And you don't need to do it for that long. And honestly, there's times where I'm rushing and I just skip that step altogether and it still comes out okay. What's that? Oh, okay. Thank you. I hear I'm talking a little too loud. So that's nice. I'll save my voice a little bit and lower it. So I'm going to cube the tofu. So they're this size, okay? So basically I've cut it in thirds horizontally. I'm going to now cut this into thirds this way. And then I'm going to cut 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts, okay? And of course, if you want it bigger or smaller, that's fine. Okay, and now we're going to toss this with just a little bit of oil. Okay, so I have all the tofu in this bowl. I'm going to toss it with a little bit of oil and a teaspoon of ginger and garlic. And if you look at the recipe, on the recipe I actually said that you can just lay the tofu out onto the cookie sheet, spray the cookie sheet with some oil, lay the tofu out, put the ginger and garlic, and then mix it up. But I have also found that it's easier to do it like this, in the bowl first. And then just lay it out onto the cookie sheet. Now I realize my cookie sheets, everything I have in this kitchen is a little bit oversized because I cook for a lot of people often. So I assume your cookie sheet is going to be more the size of the cookie sheet that I originally pressed the tofu on. So anyway, just spread the tofu out. Try to give space between each of the cubes so that when you're roasting it, it can get crispy on all sides. And halfway through, you're going to have to turn it. Okay, so I have ginger and garlic and all of this. I have space between them all. Okay, now I'm going to stick it right into the oven. And I put it on top of parchment paper. And parchment paper is just wonderful because it keeps things from sticking. So if you have parchment paper, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Okay, so I have the carrots and onions in. The next thing that takes the longest to cook would be my broccoli and my mushrooms. So I'm going to pull out the broccoli. Now, if you have stems on the broccoli, stems used to be my kids' favorite part. But the part that you don't like is the very outside, because the very outside is tough. You're just going to peel with your knife, just cut off the very edges of the broccoli stalk. And then you can slice it. And again, I'm slicing it on the angle. And then I'm going to come down the middle so that they're julienne strips again. And then you want the florets to basically be bite-sized. So you kind of cut right where you see florets, and then you're going to go back into them to make them bite-sized. Like this is a good size. Okay, just keep an eye on your stir fry.
Excuse me, Bhavani, what temperature is your oven on?
350.
Okay, thank you.
375 actually. But you can do it, you just have to watch the tofu. So it can be 375, it can be, if you're trying to go fast, you can put it up to 400. You just have to keep watching it so that you're not going to burn the tofu. So I'm taking another part of the peel off from the stem, and then going back to making florets. Again, the stem, peel it. And then add it to florets. And then again, I'm going to put in the broccoli. Now, I'm going to add a tiny drop of water. This is one of the best things to learn, is that you, instead of adding more oil, which is what I used to always do, I now just put like a tablespoon's worth of water into my stir fry. But I really am not adding more oil as I go. If I need to saute more, I add a little bit of water, but don't add a lot at a time because you don't want it to steam. You still want it to saute. So you just add like a tablespoon at a time, and that will allow it to still continue sauteing. And
Bhavani, excuse me, if you don't have a wok, can you use a cast iron frying pan?
absolutely.
Okay.
Cast iron frying pans are actually great ways of getting iron into your kids as well. You get a lot of iron from a cast iron frying pan. So it's just, if you're cooking a lot, if you have a big pan, that's good. But otherwise, the wok works really well. Okay, I'm gonna put my scraps into my compost. And I'm now gonna cut my mushrooms. Those are the next thing. Now, I also, when I was reading over the recipe, I also noticed that I did not mention adding the napa cabbage and the bok choy into the vegetables. I also did not get string beans when I was at Whole Foods. They did not have any string beans. I have frozen, but I'm going to leave them out. I'll have the frozen ones someday when I really need it. But there's plenty of vegetables here, and that's one of the beauties of making a stir fry and being your own chef. You can use what you have. If you don't have something, don't sweat it. Just leave it out, replace it with something else, or just have less vegetables in there. It's still all good. So I've cleaned my mushrooms. I leave the brown part in. Some people like to scoop that out, but I don't. I also know some people like to peel the skin off of the mushrooms. I don't do that either. I just take them as they are. But to wash mushrooms, you don't ever want to run mushrooms underwater because they're so sponge-like. They will just absorb all of the water. So you just take a wet paper towel or a wet cloth and just wipe them. And that's how you're going to deal with mushrooms. Okay, so I'm just going to cut my mushrooms into big chunks. I don't know if any of you got to see the film Fantastic Fungi, but it talks about the magic of mushrooms and the medicinal quality of mushrooms. And so they're so good for you. So the more mushrooms you can get into your family, the better. Okay, I'm going to check my eggplant. My eggplant is totally soft, so I'm turning it off. I took the cover off so it's not going to steam anymore, and I'll be adding that to the stir fry in just a little bit. My pot of water for the rice noodles is also boiling, so we can cook those now. when I was at Trader Joe's, and that's one of the things with shopping and buying organic. I find I buy different things at different places. You know, you find where a product is that you like it, or what's the most cost effective. So there's different ways. So I buy organic brown rice noodles at Trader Joe's that are $1.99 per pound. They're delicious. Actually, now they're brown rice and quinoa together, and they're delicious. They were out when I was there the last time, so I'm going to use fusilli noodles, which also are brown rice and quinoa. But, you know, compared to going to Whole Foods and spending, you know, $3.99 for 8 ounces of rice noodles, it's really a very good deal. Okay, so I have the onions in here. My water is boiling. I'm going to add some salt to the water. And people always ask me how much salt to put into the water. Basically, you want it to be just to taste a little salty, the way a nice broth would be. It's not, you know, I go in very fast with my fingers, so it's not too hot.
Where do we add the mushrooms to?
Where do you add the mushrooms to?
Yeah.
You're going to add them right into the purified
Oh,
vegetables.
okay.
Right? I have the onions, carrots, mushrooms, and broccoli in here so far.
Oh, the broccoli.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And I've lowered the temperature a little bit so it's just not cooking too fast, so that I have time to do everything else that I'm doing. I'm going to put the noodles in the pot right now. One trick that I have learned with brown rice noodles or quinoa noodles, any of these noodles, after you make them, after you pour the water into the sink, you really need to run it under cold water. Not so much to stop the cooking, but to wash off the starch that is on the noodles. If you don't do that, it ends up being mushy and having not a great texture. It kind of like doesn't, they kind of glob together. So it's really important to wash that off, even if then you're gonna reheat it. You can run it under water again to heat it up, or dip it into some more boiling water to heat it right before eating it. But you need to wash that off. So I'm gonna put this in. So these are brown rice and quinoa fusilli noodles. Now, you can also use all wheat noodles if that's what you have. You can really use, you know, or whole wheat noodles. Whatever it is that your family likes, that's the pasta you're going to use, and you're going to cook it according to the directions. Okay, I'm going to peek at my tofu, which I'm sure is not ready yet. Nope, needs a lot more time.
I have a question, Bhavani.
Yes.
What if I'm using frozen broccoli? How would do you have to thaw it? Do you add it right into the stir fry?
With frozen broccoli, you can add it right to the stir fry, but if there's a lot of ice particles on it, then I would run it under some cold water first just to remove those so it's not too watery. And I would even then try to press the broccoli in between a dish towel to try to remove some of the water.
Okay, and then what step would you add it in terms of how long it'll take compared to the others?
I believe frozen broccoli is already slightly blanched, so you maybe would add the mushrooms first and wait till the mushrooms are cooked and then add the broccoli. Because the next vegetables we're going to add are the napa cabbage and the bok choy, which go very fast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So where did I put the spoon for stirring? No? Okay, so I'm going to cut up my bok choy and my napa cabbage now. Now, the napa cabbage, they only had a big size. I do not need to put all of this in. The recipe calls for 2 cups. So you're just going to cut about 2 cups worth. Again, depending on how many people that you're feeding, you can certainly add more if you'd like. Napa cabbage also makes great, is great in the salad. I did that for the school this last month, and it was just a big hit. So napa cabbage is also really good eaten raw with a dressing on it. I'm just going to cut it a little bit so the pieces aren't too big. And I'm going to add it right now. Give it a little stir. Okay, I'm going to get my my bok choy now. And you see what I mean about being able to cut everything as you go. So you save a lot of time by doing that. You can cut the vegetables and prep them as you go so that you're not, doing all the prep beforehand and then, just throwing it all in. This way you have stuff to do while you're waiting. So I'm going to throw this in now. Okay, you can see this, it's beautiful here. I'm going to add some of my tamari and mirin. Mirin is a sweet rice wine, and it's used in all Asian cooking, or in a lot of Asian cooking. And it should not be confused with something that they call mirin that Kikkoman makes. If you go into, even Whole Foods carries it, and I've complained many times, but Kikkoman makes a mirin that actually is glucose syrup. It does not have the seaweed and the rice in it that this mirin has. So this is really the best mirin that I know of. And you're just going to pour a little bit in. Like
Bonnie, can you show that bottle up close so we could see?
Sure. Can you see it okay? Or you get closer? Made by Eden brand. And I like Eden brand products very much, even though I do not like their politics so much. So I actually boycotted them for a little while when they were, trying to keep health insurance from abortions. But I've gone back to using them. So anyway, so I put the mirin in. Now I'm going to put tamari in. And tamari is very similar to soy sauce, except it's wheat-free. It's not made with wheat, where very traditional soy sauce is, and it's also aged longer. So it has a more umami flavor to it than just regular soy sauce. And so you're going to add some of that into this stir fry. And this is really something that you're going to do by taste. I think in the recipe I put down, a couple tablespoons. What did I put down? 3 tablespoons. So that's going to be, that's up to you how much you put in. I'm going to add my eggplant now. You see how soft it is. It's beautifully steamed, and so it did not absorb any oil this way. But now it will take on the flavor of the mirin and the soy sauce. Let me give the noodles a stir. And the best way to know if they're finished, you can tell sometimes from looking, but then you want to taste one. I'm going to give it just another couple more minutes. Let me check the tofu. Okay, so the tofu is coming along. I'll show you the tofu. Okay, so it's starting to get golden. Okay, it's not sticking to the pan. You see if I stir it around, you can see the underside is a little bit more golden than the other side. I'm going to add some tamari right to this, okay? And then sizzle right in the pan. So I'm just going to take my tamari, go over the whole cookie sheet like this. Lift it up again so you can see. Okay, and I'm going to stir it up. And I'm going to put it back in the oven for just a little bit more time. Yeah?
Well, what's that sheet under the tofu?
Excuse me?
What's under the tofu?
It's a piece of parchment paper.
Oh, okay.
It keeps it from sticking. So
Oh.
it's great to use parchment paper if you have it. If you don't, you can just oil your cookie sheet well. So anyway, I'm going to put it back in the oven now just for a little bit more of this here. I'm going to stir fry a little bit more. And it's getting very well cooked, so I'm going to lower the temperature a little because I still want to add the tofu into it and the sugar snap peas. I, again, could not find snow peas, so I bought sugar snap peas. These are the sugar snap peas. Now, one thing, I don't know if you've ever eaten snow peas or sugar snap peas, and there's a hard edge on it. There's almost like a thread that you need to take off of sugar snap peas. So I've washed these, but I did not remove the thread, and these have not had many threads. I left some out so I could show you. See here? There we go, that was a good one. But if you don't take that thread off, it's tough when you bite into it, and it's really not pleasurable to eat. So you really want to take that off, but sometimes there's not much of a thread there. So you just do it, and if there's a thread there, it will certainly come off. Here we go. But if there's not, there's not. Then you don't have to worry about it. I almost think these are pre-threaded. So I'm going to add these right into my stir fry. If you wanted to cut them in half, that's up to you. You can just cut them in half, again, on the angle, just because it's a little prettier that way. But I'm going to leave them whole here. Give it another stir. You can see this is just about finished. I'm going to check my pasta because I'm guessing that's going to be ready now. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go over to the sink with the pasta. Even though I put this into a pasta pot, so it actually has, you can see, the water will drain right here, and I could just dump it right into the noodles if I wanted to, if I was doing a different recipe. But like I said, I want to rinse them first.
Where do the peas go?
The sugar snap peas go right into the stir fry.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'm running the noodles now under cold water to wash off the starch. Okay, I'm just going to let that drain over here for a bit. Okay. So let me check on the tofu. See that that's still going well. It is. See that? So I'm going to add the tofu now right into the stir fry. I'm going to turn my oven off, and I'm just going to stick the pan back in there right now just to get out of my way. Okay, so you can see, here's the stir fry with the tofu. I'm going to mix it up now, and it's going to take on some of the flavor of the soy sauce at the bottom and the mirin. And these vegetables are just perfectly ready right now. So I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to make our sauce right now. So, for the sauce, you need tahini. And tahini, if anyone doesn't know what tahini is just like peanut butter is the butter from peanuts, tahini is the butter from sesame seeds. So I'm going to pour this into my little mixer here. And you can order this Braun, B-R-A-U-N, Braun mixer, right online if you'd like. I was doing a little cooking with my kids and realized they didn't have one, and I just quickly sent them one because I felt like it was really important for them to have it. I'm going to add a little bit of parsley into this.
Can you use a food processor, Bhavani?
You can, but I'm not making that much. And so in a big food processor, it would kind of get lost, but you certainly can do that.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to add 2 cloves of garlic and some ginger. And I have 2 pieces of ginger here. The recipe says about a quarter size piece, but you can have a little bit more. I'm also going to add a quarter, does it say a quarter cup of water? Yeah. I can't see if that's a quarter cup or a half cup. Anybody see? I don't have my glasses on. We'll start with a quarter cup and I can always add more. Okay, then I'm going to put in some tamari, some dark sesame oil. Now, sesame oil there's light sesame oil that you can cook with, but mostly dark sesame oil is a seasoning. It's used as a seasoning, and it's a very distinctive taste, and it's in all Japanese and Asian cooking. So this is also Eden brand, and it's really a good brand. I think it says a tablespoon of sesame oil. And
A teaspoon of dark sesame oil.
Teaspoon?
Of dark sesame oil and a half a cup of water.
Okay, thank you. And then some tamari too. So I'm going to add a little more water since it was a half a cup. I only added a quarter cup. And then I did not add the mirin. So it also needs some more of the mirin. 1 tablespoon of mirin. And I'm just eyeing it because that's really how I cook. But I have made the recipe and checked it out. So you can follow the recipe, but also feel free to experiment with what does it taste like with a little bit more mirin? What does it taste like with a little bit more tamari? And adjust it to your family's taste. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more tahini. I actually think that the quarter cup would have been better. The half cup made it a little bit too thin. So adjust that on your recipe there. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. So this is the tahini sauce. I'm going to toast a few sesame seeds that I'm going to use as garnish. I bought these are hulled sesame seeds, so they're out of the outer skin. And a cast iron frying pan is great for this. And we're just going to... Okay, I'm going to get a bowl to toss the noodles.
Bhavani?
Yes.
Hi, it's Iris. How are you?
Hi, Iris.
What's
Good.
the name of the
How are you?
appliance, the Braun appliance, if I wanted to go online to find it?
Braun mini processor.
Okay,
So
thank
here's
you.
the noodles. They're still warm, even though I've run it under cold water. They're still warm. Okay, I'm going to put the sauce right on top of them. Toasting that. And excuse me while I get a platter to put this food on. Okay, these are perfectly toasted now. You can see what these look like. All right, so we're going to start by plating the noodles.
How long do you think you could keep leftovers in the refrigerator of this?
It's good for a week. It lasts a long time.
And how would you heat it back up? Put it back in the wok?
That's what I usually do. Right into the wok or cast iron frying pan. You can also bake it in the oven, if you don't want to be watching it. But then, of course, you run the risk of overcooking it. So we're going to garnish with some sesame seeds. And what's our timing like? Ha! We are early. Here's dinner.
Beautiful.
Here's dinner. Anyone have questions?
It looks beautiful.
Let me garnish it. I'm going to chop a little parsley and just put a little garnish on top.
Are we going to watch you and Joe eat now?
No. In this household, we eat so late. But we'll probably eat earlier than usual since it's ready.
Yeah.
But especially in the nice weather, we are outside in the garden or doing whatever until late. So you're going to just chop some parsley. And if you're someone that loves cilantro would also be really good on this, whichever you like. Just garnish with some parsley. I love parsley. And remember, people eat with their eyes. So if your kids like things separate, you can easily put the noodles separately in a bowl and then the pasta in another bowl. I usually like to put it all together in one platter. Any questions, anybody? One other tip I want to give you, I have the hot boiling water sitting over there in my sink. And years ago, my husband, I was having all these problems with leaking underneath my sink. And turns out with the plastic piping that they use now, the boiling water loosens that. So when you pour boiling water down your sink, if you have those kind of pipes, it can get loose over time and leak. So whenever I'm pouring boiling water down the drain, I'm also running cold water simultaneously so that it goes down a little bit more lukewarm instead of boiling. And so that's helpful. Good. Any other questions? So you see I have all this ginger and garlic left over that will just stay in my refrigerator with a cover on it. What's that?
No one can hear you now.
Why?
I don't know.
I didn't change anything.
I can hear you fine.
You can hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone have any other questions? I'm going to be doing this every Wednesday, so join me next week. Please, if you have requests that you'd like to learn or something that interests you, send me an email at bhavani@iEat. I am recording this, so I will be putting it up on my website. So if anybody did not get to see this, or if you want to review it again before you make the dish, feel free to do that. Okay?
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Bhavani, thank you so much.
Bonnie, thank you.
Love you.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.